Tonight, we will go on a journey through ancient Buddhist teachings to answer a question that has lived in the human heart for millennia. The question is this: what does it mean to be truly free? Not the freedom to acquire more, to become more, to achieve more, but a deeper freedom, a freedom that does not depend on circumstances, a freedom that remains unshaken, whether life brings us sunshine or storm, praise or blame, gain or loss. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you're listening from. The ancient teachers spent a long time searching for this unshakable freedom of mind, and what they discovered, through years of contemplation, was something both simple and profound. They found that this freedom we seek is not something far away. It is not waiting for us at the end of a long and difficult road. It is available to us here, in this very moment, with this very breath, and that the path to this freedom has a single direction: letting go. In the teachings that follow, we will walk this path together. Simply allow yourself to listen. Relax. Take a slow, deep breath. And let's begin our journey together. We live in a world that tells us we need more. More knowledge, more accomplishments, more possessions. The message comes at us from every direction, and we absorb it so deeply that it begins to feel like truth. We come to believe that happiness lies just around the corner, waiting for us in the next achievement, the next purchase, the next experience we have not yet had. And so we fill our days with activity. We make plans and set goals. We work and strive and reach. We add practice upon practice, technique upon technique, hoping that if we just do enough, learn enough, gather enough, we will finally arrive at that place of peace we are seeking. But here is a curious thing. The more we add, the heavier our load becomes. The more we chase, the more tired we grow. And that place of peace, it seems to move away from us like the horizon, always visible but never quite within reach. The ancient teachers noticed this pattern in the human heart. They saw how we wear ourselves out chasing after things that cannot truly satisfy us. They saw how we spend our precious days spinning in circles, always busy but never truly arriving anywhere. They watched us pile task upon task, worry upon worry, plan upon plan, until our minds became like cluttered rooms where there was no longer space to sit down and rest. And out of great compassion, they offered us a different way. A way that seems almost too simple to be true. A way that asks us not to add more, but to release what we are already carrying. Let us explore a story about a wandering monk who lived long ago in the high mountain regions of the East. The peaks there rose so high that their summits disappeared into the clouds, and the valleys between them held villages where life moved slowly, in rhythm with the seasons. This monk was not a monk of grand monasteries or impressive titles. He owned almost nothing. His robes were worn and patched, the color faded by sun and rain, and years of walking mountain paths. He carried no bag of possessions, no scrolls of credentials, no letters of introduction from important teachers. He slept wherever night found him, sometimes in caves where the walls were cool and damp and the only sound was the dripping of water somewhere in the darkness. Sometimes under the vast canopy of stars, wrapped in his thin robe, feeling the cold mountain air on his face. Sometimes in the humble homes of villagers who welcomed him with whatever simple food they had to share, a bowl of rice, some pickled vegetables, a cup of warm tea. By the standards of the world, this monk had nothing. No possessions of note, no position of authority, no comfortable dwelling to call his own. If you had passed him on a mountain trail, you might have mistaken him for a beggar, just another poor traveler moving from place to place. And yet, there was something about him that drew people near. When he arrived in a village, word would spread quickly from house to house. The farmers would set down their tools and wipe the dirt from their hands. The grandmothers would emerge from their kitchens, still smelling of wood smoke and cooking oil. The children would come running down the dusty paths, their laughter echoing off the stone walls. Everyone wanted to be close to this ragged wanderer, because in his presence, they felt something rare and precious. They felt peace. They felt as though a cool breeze had passed through the village on a hot day, bringing relief they did not even know they needed. This monk was known throughout the land for his deep understanding. Scholars and teachers from far away would seek him out, climbing the difficult mountain paths, hoping to receive his wisdom. But he never put on airs or presented himself as someone special. He continued to wander, to sleep under the stars, to share simple meals with simple people. He laughed easily. He listened carefully. He seemed to carry no burden at all, even though he had seen much of life's sorrow and difficulty. He had discovered something that all his learning could never have given him. He had discovered the freedom that comes from letting go. One day, this wandering sage sat down on a flat rock overlooking a valley. Perhaps it was evening, and the light was turning golden on the distant peaks. Perhaps he could hear the sound of a stream far below, and the call of birds settling into the trees for the night. Whatever the setting, he took up a brush and began to write. What he wrote was something like a poem, or perhaps a letter. But here is the interesting part. He addressed it to himself. He wrote as though he were giving advice to his own mind, speaking to it the way a wise old friend might speak to someone who has lost their way. The poem begins with a wake-up call. The sage speaks to his own mind as though rousing a sleeping friend. Listen, he says, in essence. You have been wandering in distraction for ages now. You have been tricked and hypnotized by appearances. Are you aware of this? Do you see what is happening? There is no harshness in his voice, only a gentle urgency. The kind of urgency that comes from love, from truly wanting someone to wake up and see clearly. He continues, right now, in this very instant, you are under the spell of mistaken seeing. You believe that the things you see are solid and lasting. You believe that if you just arrange your circumstances correctly, if you just get the right things and avoid the wrong things, you will be happy. But this is a dream. This is a trick of the mind. You must watch out. Do not let yourself get carried away by this empty life. And then he says something that cuts to the heart of our endless busyness. Something that might sound as though it were written yesterday, for us, in our hurried modern lives. Your mind is spinning around, carrying out a lot of useless projects. It is a waste. Give it up. All this thinking about the 100 plans you want to accomplish, with never enough time to finish them, just weighs down your mind. You are completely distracted by all these projects, which never come to an end but keep spreading outward like ripples in water. Can you feel the truth of this? The way our plans multiply, each one giving birth to 3 more? The way we lie awake at night with our minds churning through to-do lists that never seem to get shorter, the way we rush from one task to the next, always feeling behind. never quite catching up. The sage sees this pattern clearly, and his advice is simple and direct. Do not be a fool. Just sit quietly. The poem continues, and now the sage turns his attention to spiritual practice itself. For he knows that even here, in the realm of the sacred, we can become caught up in appearances. We can trade one kind of busyness for another and call it progress. He speaks of someone who beats a little drum, the kind of small hand drum used in certain ceremonies and rituals. The person beats their drum, performs their spiritual exercises, and others watch and find it charming. How devoted, they think. How spiritual. He speaks of someone who recites beautiful words about letting go of attachment to the body, high and holy words, but who still holds that body dear, who still grasps at comfort and fears discomfort, who still believes deep down that they are this collection of flesh and bone. He speaks of all the attractive equipment of spiritual practice, the special cushions and the beautiful beads and the fine robes and the elaborate rituals. All the things that make us look spiritual, that make us feel spiritual, that allow us to tell ourselves a story about how far we have come on the path. And his advice? Forget about it. This may seem harsh at first. After all, are not these practices meant to help us? Are they not tools for awakening? Yes, they are. And the sage does not dismiss them entirely. But he sees something that we often miss. He sees how easily we can become attached to the tools themselves. He sees how we can spend years polishing our meditation cushion, arranging our altar just so, perfecting our technique, while the work of true letting go remains undone. We can become so busy being spiritual that we never quite get around to being free. The practice is our fingers pointing at the moon, but they are not the moon itself. If we become so fascinated with the fingers that we never look up, we will miss what they are pointing toward. And so the sage offers this final instruction, the essence of all his wandering and all his realization, the fruit of all those nights sleeping under the stars and all those simple meals shared with villagers. He offers the simplest teaching of all. If you let go of everything, that is the real point. Even though you do not know how to practice perfectly, just let go of everything. That is what I really want to say. Let go of everything. Not some things. Not most things. Everything. The same truth appears in the teachings of another great master from long ago. This teacher was known for his extraordinary depth of realization, and students came from great distances to receive his guidance. They crossed rivers and climbed mountains. They left behind their families and their comfortable homes. They endured hunger and cold and exhaustion, all for the chance to sit at this master's feet and receive the teaching that would set them free. One such student arrived after a long and difficult journey. His clothes were dusty from the road. His feet were blistered from walking, but his eyes were bright with longing. He had heard of the master's wisdom and was determined to receive the highest teachings, the secret knowledge that would unlock the door to liberation. When he finally stood before his teacher, he asked for the secret of freedom. His voice trembled slightly with the weight of his hope. The master looked at him with great kindness. His eyes were soft and warm, like sunlight filtering through leaves. And he said simply, "You are not trapped by the things you see. You are trapped by your clinging to them. So let go of your clinging." That was the teaching, the whole of it. The student may have expected something more elaborate. A complex practice, perhaps, or a secret mantra, or a map of spiritual states to be attained. But the Master offered none of these things. He offered only this simple truth, given freely, like water from a clear spring. You are not bound by the things you see, the sounds you hear, the experiences you have. The world of appearances is not your prison. You are bound by how you hold on to these things. You are bound by your grasping, your clutching, your refusal to let go. The walls of your prison are made not of stone but of attachment. And the key to your freedom has been in your hand all along. You need only open your fingers and let it turn. What is remarkable is how consistent this message is across the many streams of Buddhist teaching. The traditions may differ in their outer forms. They may use different words, different rituals, different ways of sitting and walking and bowing. But when it comes to the heart of liberation, they speak with one voice. The Buddha himself expressed this truth with great clarity. He said that the supreme state of peace is found through non-clinging. He called this realization the deathless, this freedom that comes when we stop grasping at things that cannot be held. Imagine water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips through your fingers. But if you simply let your hands be soft and open, the water can rest there, at least for a moment, before it continues on its way. This is how we are to hold our experiences. Gently, openly, without grasping. The teachers of different traditions said the same thing in their own words. The masters of the various schools pointed toward the same moon, even if they called it by different names. The quiet meditators in the forests, the scholars in the universities, the hermits in their mountain caves, all agreed. The path to freedom is the path of letting go. This is not a path of adding more to our lives. It is not a path of gathering special experiences or collecting spiritual achievements. It is the simplest of all paths, and perhaps for that reason, the most challenging. It asks us to move against the current of our habits. It asks us to open our hands and release what we have been holding so tightly. Perhaps you have noticed how a small child will grasp an object with fierce determination. Try to take a toy from a young child's hand and you will meet surprising resistance. The little fingers curl tight, the arm pulls back, and sometimes there are tears and cries of protest. The child holds on as though their life depended on it. We smile at this. We understand that the child does not yet know that there will be other toys, other pleasures, other moments of delight. The child believes that this toy, this moment, is everything. And so the child clings. But are we so different? Do we not grasp at our pleasures with the same fierce determination? Do we not hold tight to our opinions, our plans, our sense of who we are and how the world should be? Do we not believe, somewhere deep inside, that if we just hold on tightly enough, we can keep the things we love from changing, from shifting, from eventually slipping away? The sage in the mountains understood this tendency of the human heart. He saw it in himself, which is why he wrote that poem as advice to his own mind. And he offered us a different image. Instead of the clenched fist of the frightened child, he pointed toward the open hand. Picture an open hand, palm facing upward, fingers relaxed and slightly curved. This hand can still receive. It can still hold things gently. A butterfly might land there and rest for a moment before flying away. A few drops of rain might collect in the palm before evaporating in the sun. But this hand does not grasp. It does not clutch. It allows things to come, and it allows things to go. It remains at peace, whether it is full or empty. This is the mind of non-clinging. Not a mind that is empty of experience, but a mind that is free within experience. Not a mind that has become cold and uncaring, but a mind that has become spacious enough to hold all of life with tenderness and grace. How do we learn this art of the open hand? How do we loosen the grip that we have been tightening for so many years? The wandering sage gave us a clue when he said that even if we do not know how to practice perfectly, we can simply let go. This means that letting go is not something we achieve after years of effort. It is not a prize waiting at the end of a long road. It is something we can do right now, in this very moment, with whatever is arising in our experience. A thought appears in the mind. We can let it go, not by pushing it away, not by fighting with it, not by pretending it is not there, but simply by not holding on to it, by allowing it to pass through, like a bird flying across an open sky. A sensation arises in the body, an ache, a tingling, a warmth, a coolness. We can let it go. We can feel it fully, be present with it completely, and then allow it to change and shift and eventually fade, as all sensations do. An emotion swells in the heart. Joy or sadness, excitement or boredom, hope or fear. We can let it go. We can make space for it, acknowledge it, even welcome it, and then watch as it transforms and passes, like weather moving across the sky. The Buddha taught that nothing whatsoever should be held onto as permanent, as ultimately satisfying, as the solid ground we can build our lives upon. When we truly understand this, not just with our thinking minds but with our whole being, the grip naturally loosens. The fist naturally opens into a hand. The wandering sage ended his poem with honesty and encouragement. His teaching was direct and simple, he admitted. But he also knew that simple does not mean easy. We have spent a lifetime learning to grasp. The habit is deep. It runs through us like water through the roots of an ancient tree. We will not pull it out in a single day. And yet, every moment of letting go weakens the habit a little. Every time we release our grip, even briefly, we taste the freedom that is possible. And that taste gives us courage to continue. It reminds us that the peace we seek is not far away. It is here, waiting for us, in the simple act of opening our hands. The path is simple. Let go of everything. But we walk it one step at a time, one breath at a time, one small release at a time. And somewhere along the way, we may find that we have become like that wandering sage in the mountains. We may find that with almost nothing to call our own, we have everything we ever truly needed. For as the ancient teachers remind us, the one who has let go of clinging has found the peace that cannot be shaken. The one who grasps at nothing has their hands free to embrace the whole world. Let us pause here for a moment. Let these words settle like leaves drifting down to rest upon still water. And when you are ready, we will continue together. Having heard the wandering sage's advice to simply let go, we might find ourselves wondering, let go of what, exactly? And why is letting go so difficult in the first place? To answer these questions, let us take a walk together. Imagine that we are moving through a forest in autumn. The air is cool and carries that particular smell of fallen leaves, earthy and sweet and faintly sad. Sunlight filters through the branches above, dappled and golden, shifting as the breeze moves the remaining leaves. Our feet make soft sounds on the forest floor, crunching through the dry leaves that have already fallen, stepping over roots and stones. This is a forest that has stood for a very long time. The trees here are old, their trunks thick and gnarled, their roots spreading wide and deep into the earth. Generations of people have walked these paths before us. And as we walk, we begin to notice something interesting. Running through the forest, sometimes visible and sometimes hidden by undergrowth, are old stone walls. They stretch on and on, disappearing into the trees, reappearing again further along. Some sections are still standing strong, the stones fitted together with care. Other sections have tumbled down, the stones scattered and covered with moss. Who built these walls? And why are they here, in the middle of a forest where no one seems to live anymore? Let us stop for a moment and look more closely at one of these walls. See how the stones are stacked, one upon another. Some are large and heavy, requiring strength to lift. Others are smaller, wedged into gaps to make the wall stable. Each stone was chosen by someone. Each stone was carried from somewhere and placed here with intention. Imagine the person who built this wall. Perhaps it was a farmer, working in the early morning light before the heat of the day. Perhaps his hands were rough and calloused from years of labor. Perhaps he paused now and then to wipe the sweat from his forehead and look out over the land he was clearing, the land he hoped to plant and harvest, the land he hoped to pass on to his children. He had dreams, this farmer. He had worries and hopes and fears. He had a family he loved. He had neighbors he knew by name. He had a whole life, as vivid and real to him as your life is to you right now. He placed these stones one by one, building something he hoped would last. And in a way, it has lasted. Here is the wall, still standing after all these years. But the farmer himself? Where is he now? Where are the crops he planted? The house he lived in? The animals he tended? Further along the path, we come upon something else. It is the foundation of an old house, just the outline of stones marking where the walls once stood. The house itself is long gone. The roof that kept out the rain, the door that opened to welcome visitors, the windows that let in the morning light, all vanished. Only these stones remain, slowly sinking into the earth, slowly being swallowed by moss and fern and the patient work of tree roots. Someone lived here once. A family gathered around a fire on cold winter nights. Children played in the dooryard. Meals were cooked and eaten. Stories were told. Tears were shed. Laughter rang out. All the ordinary moments of a human life unfolded within these walls that are no longer here. Those lives were as real as ours. Those people felt the warmth of the sun on their faces, just as we do. They watched the seasons turn, just as we do. They loved and worried and hoped, just as we do. And now, all that remains are these stones, these quiet monuments to lives that have passed. As we continue our walk through the forest, we notice how the trees are changing. Some have already dropped most of their leaves and stand with bare branches reaching toward the grey sky. Others are still dressed in brilliant colors, red and orange and gold, putting on one last display before the winter comes. This forest knows something about impermanence. It does not resist the turning of the seasons. It does not try to hold on to summer when autumn arrives. It does not grieve when the leaves fall. It simply moves through the cycle, surrendering to each change as it comes. Think about what this forest has witnessed. Spring after spring, the buds have swelled and opened, tender green leaves unfurling toward the light. Summer after summer, the canopy has grown thick and lush, providing shade for the creatures who live here. Autumn after autumn, the leaves have changed color and fallen, carpeting the ground in gold and brown. Winter after winter, the trees have stood bare and patient, waiting in the cold and silence for the warmth to return. How many times has this cycle repeated? Hundreds of times. Thousands of times. The forest does not keep count. It does not cling to any particular season, wishing it would stay forever. It does not push away any season, wishing it would hurry up and end. It simply receives what comes and lets go of what passes. There is a teaching here, if we are willing to receive it. The trees do not suffer over the falling of their leaves. They do not spend the summer worrying about the winter to come. They do not spend the winter longing for the summer that has passed. They live fully in each season, responding to the conditions of the moment, and then they let go. What would it be like to live this way? To receive each experience as it comes, fully and openly, and then to release it when it passes? To stop fighting against the natural rhythm of change that moves through all things? The ancient teachers used many images to point toward this truth of constant change. One of the most beautiful is the image of a river. You have probably stood beside a river at some point in your life, watching the water flow past. The surface catches the light and sparkles. Leaves and twigs float by, carried along by the current. The water moves and moves and moves, never stopping, never pausing, always flowing toward the sea. Now here is an interesting question. Is it the same river you are watching from one moment to the next? In one sense, yes. You might say, I am standing beside this river, and you would point to the water flowing past. But in another sense, the river you are looking at right now is not the same river you were looking at a moment ago. That water has already flowed downstream. New water has taken its place. The river is not a thing. It is a process, a continuous flowing, a constant becoming and passing away. Our lives are like this river. We speak of ourselves as though we were solid and unchanging. This is who I am, we say, pointing to our bodies, our personalities, our memories, our beliefs. But when we look closely, we see that everything is flowing. The body we have today is not the body we had 10 years ago. The thoughts passing through our minds right now will be gone in a moment, replaced by new thoughts. Our emotions shift and change like weather. Our circumstances transform, sometimes slowly, sometimes with startling speed. There is no solid ground to stand on. There is only the river, flowing and flowing, carrying us along, whether we resist or surrender. Sometimes the changes in our lives are gentle and gradual, like the slow turning of the seasons. We barely notice them happening. One day we look in the mirror and realize that our hair has gone gray, and we wonder when that happened. One day we notice that our children have grown tall, and we cannot quite remember them being small. But sometimes the changes come suddenly, without warning. We may be moving through our days in the ordinary way, everything familiar and stable, and then something happens that turns our whole world upside down. It might be an illness that arrives without invitation, changing the landscape of our lives in a single afternoon. It might be a loss that we never imagined, a goodbye we were not prepared to say. It might be a natural disaster, a storm or a flood or an earthquake that sweeps away in hours what took years to build. It might be a shift in circumstances, a job that ends, a relationship that changes, a door that closes unexpectedly. These sudden changes can shake us to our core. They remind us, sometimes painfully, that we are not in control, that the stability we thought we had was always more fragile than we knew, that the ground beneath our feet was never as solid as it seemed. The ancient teachers did not say these things to frighten us. They said them out of compassion, because they knew that seeing the truth clearly, even when it is difficult, is the beginning of freedom. When we understand that change is not a mistake but the very nature of existence, we can begin to make peace with it. We can begin to loosen our grip on the way we think things should be and open ourselves to the way things actually are. There is a gentle paradox at the heart of this teaching on impermanence. On one hand, nothing lasts. The stone walls crumble. The leaves fall. The river flows on. Our lives move forward, and we cannot go back, not even for a moment, to the way things were before. On the other hand, nothing is truly lost. The farmer who built the wall is gone, but the wall remains as a testament to his labor. The people who lived in that house have passed on, but the love they shared, the kindness they showed, the lives they touched, these things ripple outward in ways we cannot trace. The leaves that fall from the trees decay and become part of the soil, nourishing the roots of the trees that will grow new leaves in the spring. Everything is connected. Everything is part of one great flowing. When we see this clearly, impermanence is not only a source of sadness, it is also a source of wonder. How amazing that anything exists at all. How precious each moment becomes when we understand that it will not come again. A teacher once said that it is not impermanence that makes us suffer. It is our resistance to impermanence. It is our insistence that things should stay the same, that we should be able to hold on to what we love, that change should not touch us. This resistance is like trying to stop a river with our hands. We cannot succeed, and the effort exhausts us. But when we stop resisting, when we let the river flow, something remarkable happens. We discover that we can float. We discover that the river itself will carry us. We discover a peace that does not depend on things staying the same. Let us pause in our walk through the forest and watch a single leaf fall from a tree. See how it releases its hold on the branch. There is no struggle, no grasping, no attempt to hold on a little longer. When the time comes, the leaf simply lets go. Watch it drift downward through the air. It does not fall in a straight line. It turns and spins and floats, caught by little currents of air, dancing its way toward the ground. There is something beautiful in this descent, something graceful and unhurried. Finally, the leaf comes to rest on the forest floor, joining all the other leaves that have fallen before it. It will lie here through the autumn and winter. It will be covered by snow. It will slowly break down and become part of the earth. And in the spring, its nutrients will feed the tree that will grow new leaves, and the cycle will continue. The leaf does not mourn its falling. It does not wish it could climb back up to the branch. It simply participates in the great turning, offering itself to the process, letting go completely. Can we learn to fall like this? Can we learn to meet the changes in our lives with this kind of grace, not grasping, not insisting that things should be other than they are, but simply letting go and trusting the process? We return now to the image we explored in the last chapter, the image of the open hand. We spoke of how the sage in the mountains taught us to hold our experiences lightly, without grasping. Now we can understand more deeply why this matters. When we try to hold on to things that are constantly changing, we create suffering for ourselves. It is like trying to grip water or catch the wind. The tighter we hold, the more we lose. The harder we try to keep things the same, the more painful their inevitable change becomes. But when we learn to hold our experiences with open hands, something shifts. We can still love deeply. We can still engage fully with our lives. We can still appreciate beauty and connection and joy. But we do so without clinging, without demanding that these experiences stay forever, without building our sense of security on things that cannot provide it. This is not coldness or indifference. It is actually a deeper kind of love. It is a love that says, I treasure this moment exactly as it is, without needing it to be different, without needing it to last. It is a love that can embrace change rather than fighting it, because it understands that change is woven into the very fabric of existence. As we reach the edge of the forest and look out over the open land beyond, we might take a moment to reflect on what we have seen. The stone walls slowly returning to the earth, the empty foundations where families once lived, the leaves falling from the trees, the river flowing endlessly toward the sea. All of this is impermanence. All of this is change. And when we see it clearly, when we stop fighting it and start accepting it, we discover something surprising. There is a peace that remains even in the midst of change. There is a stillness at the heart of the flowing. There is something in us that can witness the coming and going without being swept away by it. The ancient teachers pointed toward this peace again and again. They said that when we let go of our clinging to things that cannot satisfy us, we discover a deeper satisfaction. When we release our grip on things that cannot give us security, we find a security that nothing can shake. This is not something we achieve someday in the future. It is something we can taste right now, in any moment when we simply stop grasping and allow things to be as they are. In any moment when we remember that change is not our enemy but our teacher. In any moment when we let go. The forest knows this peace. The falling leaves know it. The flowing river knows it. And somewhere deep inside, beneath all our grasping and resisting, we know it too. Let us rest here for a moment. Take a breath and let it go. And when you are ready, we will walk on together. We have begun to see that everything changes. The walls we build eventually crumble. The leaves we admire eventually fall. The moments we treasure eventually pass. And we have heard the ancient teaching that freedom comes through letting go, through loosening our grip on experiences that cannot be held. But knowing this and living this are two very different things. We may understand in our minds that clinging brings suffering, and yet we find ourselves clinging anyway. We may sincerely wish to let go, and yet our fingers seem to tighten of their own accord. Why is this so? What is it that makes letting go so difficult? The Buddha, in his great compassion, did not simply tell us to let go and leave us to figure out the rest on our own. He also pointed out the specific places where we tend to cling, the particular traps that catch us again and again. He shone a light into the corners of the heart where attachment hides, so that we might see it clearly and begin to free ourselves. One of the most common places we cling is to the pleasures of the senses. The things we see and hear and taste and smell and touch, the experiences that feel good, that bring us enjoyment, that make us want more. This is the wanting mind, the part of us that reaches toward pleasant experiences and tries to hold on to them, the part that says, yes, this, more of this, do not let this end. There is nothing wrong with enjoying pleasant experiences. Life offers us many beautiful gifts, and we are meant to receive them. But there is a difference between receiving a gift with gratitude and grasping at it with desperation. There is a difference between appreciating what is here and demanding that it stay forever. The wanting mind does not know this difference. It only knows that it wants. Let us explore a story about a meditator who learned something important about the wanting mind. This meditator had traveled far from home to practice in a monastery in the East. The monastery was a simple place, with few comforts. The rooms were small and spare. The daily routine was strict. And the food was very basic. Each day, the meals were the same. Plain rice, simple vegetables, tea. There was nothing fancy. Nothing rich, nothing to excite the palate. This was by design, of course. The monastery was a place for training the mind, not for indulging the senses. The simple food was part of the practice. In the evenings, sometimes the monks and visiting meditators would be served tea and fruit. But even here, the portions were modest. Just a cup of tea, and perhaps 2 small bananas. And when we say small, we mean small. These were not the large yellow bananas you might find in a market. These were tiny things, no longer than a finger, just a few bites each. Now, this meditator had been practicing for some time. The mind was becoming concentrated. Mindfulness was growing sharper. There was clarity and stillness and a deepening sense of peace. Sometimes, during sitting meditation, the meditator would enter states of great calm and insight. The mind would become bright and focused. Awareness would become vivid and precise. In these moments, it seemed as though the doors of understanding were beginning to open. On one particular evening, the meditator was sitting in just such a state. The meditation was going beautifully. The mind was settled and clear. Insight seemed close, almost within reach. This was the kind of sitting that practitioners dream about, the kind where everything comes together, where all the effort and patience of practice seems to bear fruit. And then, from somewhere in the monastery, came the sound of a bell. The tea bell. It was time for the evening refreshment. Now, consider the choice that presented itself in that moment. On one hand, there was this beautiful meditation, this opening into deeper understanding, this taste of the freedom that the teachings promise. On the other hand, there were 2 very small bananas and a cup of tea. From the outside, the choice seems obvious. Who would trade a glimpse of awakening for a few bites of fruit? Who would step away from the threshold of liberation for something so small and ordinary? But the wanting mind does not calculate in this way. The wanting mind heard the bell, and it wanted the bananas. It did not care about awakening or liberation or deeper understanding. It cared about those 2 small pieces of fruit. And so the meditator got up and went to tea. This story is told not to shame or criticize, but to illuminate something true about all of us. The wanting mind is powerful. It is persistent. And it does not only activate for large and dramatic pleasures. It can be triggered by the smallest things. A particular food, a comfortable seat, a few minutes of idle entertainment, the smell of something cooking, the promise of a pleasant sensation, however brief. We might think that if we could just remove the big temptations from our lives, we would be free. But the wanting mind is not so easily defeated. It will find something to want. It will manufacture desire out of the most ordinary circumstances. It will turn a tiny banana into an irresistible prize. This is why the path of freedom is not about arranging our external circumstances perfectly. It is not about removing all pleasant things from our lives so that we have nothing to desire. It is about understanding the nature of desire itself, seeing how it operates in the mind, and learning not to be controlled by it. The meditator who chose the bananas over meditation was not a failure. That meditator was simply being human. But there is something to learn from that moment of choice, something about how easily we can be pulled away from what matters most, something about the surprising strength of even small desires. As one teacher put it, the force of craving is strong even when the object is small. The wanting mind does not only reach for physical pleasures like food and comfort. It also reaches for the pleasures of the mind itself. The pleasure of daydreaming, the pleasure of fantasy, the pleasure of being lost in thought. Have you noticed how much time you spend somewhere other than where you are? Your body might be sitting in a room, but your mind is far away, replaying a conversation from yesterday, rehearsing a conversation for tomorrow, imagining scenes that may never happen, revisiting memories that have long since passed. There is a certain sweetness in this wandering. The mind seems to enjoy it. Even when the thoughts are not particularly pleasant, even when we are worrying or planning or rehashing old grievances, there is something almost comfortable about being lost. It is familiar. It is the water we have been swimming in for so long that we hardly notice it anymore. But here is something curious. When we are lost in thought, we are not really living our lives. We are living in a kind of dream, a mental movie that plays on the screen of awareness, while the actual moments of our lives slip by unnoticed. The cup of tea grows cold while we think about something else. The sunset blazes and fades while we are lost in planning. The people we love speak to us, and we half hear them through the fog of our own mental chatter. The ancient teachers called this a kind of sleep, a trance, a spell. They said we are like people who are dreaming and do not know they are dreaming. The whole of the spiritual path, in a sense, is about waking up from this dream. There is a helpful practice for working with the wandering mind, especially when it tends to wander down the same paths again and again. Most of us have certain grooves in our thinking, familiar routes that the mind likes to travel. Perhaps there is a recurring fantasy, something we imagine over and over. Perhaps there is a worry that we revisit repeatedly, even though thinking about it never seems to help. Perhaps there is an old memory that we replay, or an imaginary conversation that we rehearse, or a daydream that we return to whenever we are bored or uncomfortable. These mental paths can feel very compelling. When the mind turns toward them, there is a kind of pull, a sense that we need to go down this road, that there is something important waiting for us at the end. But here is the truth. These paths are dead ends. They do not lead anywhere. We walk down them again and again, and every time we arrive at the same place, which is nowhere. And then we have to turn around and come back and begin again. The practice is simply to recognize this. To see, right at the beginning of the familiar path, that it is a dead end. To place a sign in the mind that says quite clearly, this road goes nowhere. We do not have to fight with the thought, or push it away, or pretend it is not there. We simply acknowledge the truth. This is a dead end. I have been down this road many times. It has never taken me anywhere. I do not have to go down it again. Sometimes the mind will go down the road anyway. That is fine. We are not trying to achieve perfect control. We are simply planting seeds of awareness, little reminders that can help us wake up from the dream a moment sooner. And sometimes, more and more often as we practice, the sign will work. We will see the dead end clearly, and we will not bother to walk down that road. We will stay here, in this moment, in this breath, in this life. None of this means that we should not enjoy the pleasures of life. The Buddha did not teach that pleasure is bad, or that we should punish ourselves by avoiding all enjoyment. He himself, after years of extreme self-denial, realized that this approach does not lead to freedom. He called it one of the two extremes to be avoided, the other being a life of heedless indulgence. The middle way is not about rejecting pleasure. It is about changing our relationship to pleasure. It is about learning to receive pleasant experiences without grasping at them, to enjoy them without demanding that they continue, to appreciate them without building our happiness upon them. When we eat something delicious, we can taste it fully, savoring each bite, being present with the flavors and textures. And when the meal is over, we can let it go. We do not need to immediately start planning the next meal, or lamenting that this meal is finished, or trying to recreate the exact same experience tomorrow. When we see something beautiful, we can take it in with our whole being, letting it fill our eyes and our heart. And when we move on, we can let it go. We do not need to possess the beautiful thing, or worry that we will never see something so beautiful again, or resent the beauty for being temporary. When we spend time with someone we love, we can be fully present, giving them our complete attention, receiving the gift of their presence. And when we part, we can let them go. We do not need to cling or grasp or hold on so tightly that we squeeze the joy out of the connection. This is the art of receiving without grasping. It is the practice of enjoying life while remaining free within life. Let us return for a moment to our meditator and those two small bananas. What happened after the tea bell rang? The meditator got up, went to the dining hall, drank the tea, ate the bananas, and then returned to the meditation cushion. The beautiful concentrated state from before was gone, of course. That moment had passed. Now there was just an ordinary sitting, with an ordinary wandering mind, with all the usual challenges and distractions. Was something lost? In a sense, yes. That particular opportunity had passed. But the meditator learned something valuable that evening, something that could not have been learned any other way. The meditator saw, directly and clearly, the power of wanting. The meditator felt how easily the mind can be pulled toward pleasant things, even tiny ones, even when something far more precious is at stake. This seeing is itself part of the path. When we notice ourselves grasping, we are already a little bit free. We are no longer completely lost in the trance of desire. We are beginning to wake up. The great teachers tell us that insight does not only come in dramatic flashes of enlightenment, it also comes in small recognitions, humble moments of seeing ourselves clearly. Each time we notice the wanting mind in action, we weaken its grip a little. Each time we observe desire without being completely swept away by it, we grow a little more free. And so, the meditator who chose bananas over meditation did not fail. That meditator simply took another step on the path, a step that happened to pass through the dining hall. There is a beautiful quality that the Buddhist tradition calls contentment. It is the feeling of having enough, of not needing more, of being satisfied with what is present. Contentment does not mean that we never strive for anything, or that we accept harmful situations without trying to change them. It means that we are not constantly driven by the feeling that something is missing, that we need more, that happiness is waiting somewhere other than where we are. The wanting mind is never content. It cannot be, because its nature is to want. As soon as one desire is satisfied, another arises. The wanting mind is like a fire that grows larger the more fuel it is given. The only way to find peace is not to feed it endlessly, but to see through it, to recognize that no amount of getting will ever be enough. The Buddha said, "Contentment is the greatest wealth." Think about what this means. We often believe that we will be content when we have enough wealth, enough possessions, enough pleasurable experiences. But the Buddha turns this around. Contentment itself is the treasure. When we have contentment, we are already rich, no matter how little we possess. When we lack contentment, we are poor, no matter how much we accumulate. This does not mean forcing ourselves to feel satisfied when we do not. It means seeing clearly how the wanting mind operates, how it promises happiness and delivers only more wanting. When we see this clearly enough, contentment begins to arise on its own. We stop reaching for the next thing. We settle into this moment. We discover that what we have been seeking was here all along. There is a phrase that some teachers use, "This is enough." It is a simple phrase, just 3 words, but it contains a profound teaching. When we are eating, and the wanting mind reaches for more, this is enough. When we are resting, and the wanting mind looks for entertainment, this is enough. When we are sitting in meditation, and the wanting mind imagines something better, this is enough. This does not mean resignation or defeat. It means recognition. It means seeing that the present moment, just as it is, contains everything we need. It means understanding that happiness is not hiding in the next experience, the next pleasure, the next attainment. Happiness is available now, if we can simply stop reaching for something else. The meditator with the bananas eventually learned this. Perhaps not that night, perhaps not even that year, but eventually. And when that learning came, it did not arrive as a great revelation, but as a quiet settling, a gentle homecoming, a simple willingness to be present with whatever was arising, without needing it to be different. This is the freedom that the teachings point toward. Not a freedom from experience, but a freedom within experience. Not a freedom from pleasure, but a freedom from the desperate grasping that turns pleasure into pain. Not a life without enjoyment, but a life where enjoyment no longer has us by the throat. And it begins, as all things begin, with seeing clearly. with noticing the wanting mind when it arises, with recognizing the dead-end roads of habitual thinking, with placing a gentle sign that says, "This way goes nowhere," with choosing, again and again, to come back to the present moment, to this breath, to this life, to this perfectly sufficient now. Let us pause here for a moment. Take a breath. Let it go. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have seen how the wanting mind reaches for pleasant experiences, how it grasps at the small pleasures of the senses and pulls us away from the deeper satisfactions of presence and peace. But the wanting mind is not the only place where we cling. There is another kind of grasping that is subtler and, in some ways, even more powerful. It does not reach for food or comfort or pleasant sensations. It reaches for something that seems much more reasonable, much more justified, much more necessary. It reaches for being right. We cling to our views, our opinions, our beliefs about how things are and how they should be. We hold tight to our interpretations of events, our judgments of people, our positions on questions large and small. And this clinging, like all clinging, creates suffering. It closes our hearts, narrows our minds, and separates us from others who see things differently. The Buddha spoke of this tendency with great clarity. He said that attachment to views is one of the deepest forms of bondage, one of the most stubborn obstacles to freedom. We may be willing to let go of many things, but our opinions, our sense that we understand how things really are, this is much harder to release. And yet, release it we must, if we wish to find the peace that does not depend on being right. Think for a moment about how it feels to be certain, to know without doubt that you are right and someone else is wrong. There is a kind of satisfaction in it, a sense of solidity and security. The world makes sense. Things are clear. You know where you stand. But notice also the tension in this certainty. Notice the subtle hardness it creates in the heart. When we are certain, we are also defended. We are braced against anyone who might challenge our view. We are ready to argue, to prove our point, to demonstrate why we are correct and others are mistaken. This is not a peaceful state. It is a state of quiet warfare, of constant vigilance, of protecting our position against all who might threaten it. And here is something curious. We often have strong opinions about things we know very little about. We form judgments quickly, based on limited information, and then we hold those judgments as though they were precious treasures that must be protected at all costs. Someone says something, and within moments we have decided what kind of person they are. We read a headline, and within seconds we have formed an opinion about a complex situation we barely understand. We encounter an idea that is different from our own, and we reject it before we have truly considered it. The mind does this so quickly, so automatically, that we hardly notice it happening. And once an opinion is formed, it becomes part of our identity. To question the opinion feels like questioning ourselves. To admit we might be wrong feels like a kind of defeat. But what if it is not defeat? What if admitting we do not know is actually a kind of victory? What if the release of certainty brings not loss, but freedom? Let us explore a story about a practitioner who discovered the freedom of not knowing. This practitioner had spent many years studying and practicing in one particular tradition. The teachings of this tradition had become deeply familiar, like a well-worn path through a forest. The practitioner knew the landmarks, understood the terrain, could navigate with confidence. One of the central teachings of this tradition was that those who have fully awakened do not return after they pass from this life. They have completed the journey. They have reached the far shore. They do not come back. This teaching made sense to the practitioner. It fit with everything else that had been learned. It was accepted without question, held as simply true. Then one day, the practitioner encountered something puzzling. It was an announcement for a talk by a great teacher from a different tradition. This teacher was renowned for his deep realization, his compassion, his wisdom. People traveled great distances just to be in his presence. But the announcement said something strange. It described this teacher as a reincarnation of one of the Buddha's own disciples, a great sage who had lived thousands of years ago. The practitioner's mind stumbled. This could not be right. According to everything the practitioner had learned, that ancient sage would not have come back. He had been fully awakened. He would not take rebirth. And yet here was this announcement from a tradition with its own ancient lineage and its own great teachers saying otherwise. The practitioner felt a kind of inner conflict, a tightness, a need to resolve this contradiction. Which view was correct? Whose understanding was right? The question seemed important, even urgent. And then something shifted. In a moment of unexpected clarity, the practitioner realized something simple but profound. I do not know. Not my tradition is right and theirs is wrong. Not their tradition is right and mine is wrong. Just, I do not know. The practitioner had never personally verified whether awakened beings take rebirth or not. This was not something that had been seen directly, investigated firsthand, confirmed through personal experience. It was simply a teaching that had been accepted, a belief that had been adopted, a view that had been held. And the same was true of the other tradition's teaching. The practitioner had not verified that either. Both were simply views, passed down through generations, held with varying degrees of conviction by different communities of practitioners. In that moment of recognizing I do not know, something released. The tightness in the mind softened. The need to be right dissolved. The practitioner could appreciate both teachings without needing to choose between them, without needing to defend one against the other. And more than that, the practitioner discovered that it was not necessary to have an opinion about everything. It was possible to simply not know, and to be at peace with not knowing. It was possible to hold questions open, to let mysteries remain mysterious, to rest in the spaciousness of uncertainty. This was not a collapse into confusion or indifference. It was a release from the burden of having to know, of having to be right, of having to have the answers. And in that release, the heart opened wider than it had been in a very long time. The Buddha spoke often about the dangers of clinging to views. He saw how much suffering it causes, not just for individuals, but for whole communities, whole nations, whole generations. Think of how many conflicts throughout history have been fueled by attachment to beliefs. People have harmed one another, sometimes terribly, in the name of their convictions. Families have been torn apart. Friendships have been destroyed. Communities have been divided. all because different groups held different views and could not let go of the need to be right. This does not mean that all views are equal, or that truth does not matter, or that we should never take a stand on anything. Some views lead toward harm, and it is right to oppose them. Some views lead toward well-being, and it is right to support them. Discernment is important. Wisdom is essential. But there is a difference between holding a view with wisdom and clinging to a view with attachment. When we hold a view with wisdom, we can consider other perspectives. We can change our minds if new evidence arises. We can disagree with others without hating them. We can stand firm on what matters while remaining humble about the limits of our understanding. When we cling to a view with attachment, we become rigid. We cannot hear what others are saying. We defend our position at all costs. We make our opinion part of our identity, so that any challenge to the opinion feels like a challenge to our very self. The path of freedom asks us to hold our views lightly, to be willing to say, "I do not know," to remain curious rather than defensive, to value truth more than being right. Let us explore another story, one that illustrates what becomes possible when we let go of attachment to our views. Once, a gathering was held at a monastery in a quiet countryside. It was an unusual gathering, bringing together practitioners from two different religious traditions that, on the surface, seemed to have little in common. There were about 50 people in all, monks and nuns and teachers from both paths. Among them was a revered teacher from the East, a man known throughout the world for his wisdom and compassion. He had spent his life studying and practicing and teaching the way of awakening. He knew the scriptures of his tradition intimately. He had devoted himself completely to its path. The gathering lasted several days. There were discussions and presentations, dialogues and debates. The practitioners from both traditions shared their understanding, their practices, their ways of approaching the great questions of life. Sometimes they agreed. Sometimes they disagreed. But throughout, there was a spirit of mutual respect, a genuine interest in learning from one another. On the final day, something happened that would be remembered long after the discussions were forgotten. The abbot of the monastery, an elderly man with kind eyes and a gentle manner, was walking down a corridor after one of the sessions. Ahead of him, walking alone, was the revered teacher from the East. At the end of the corridor stood a statue. It was a figure sacred to the monastery's tradition, a representation of a divine feminine presence, a mother of compassion and grace. For the monks who lived in this place, the statue was a focal point of devotion, a symbol of everything they held most dear. The abbot walked slowly, lost in thought. He watched as the teacher from the East approached the statue, and then he witnessed something that stopped him in his tracks. The teacher paused before the statue. He looked at it for a moment with quiet attention, and then, slowly and deliberately, he bowed. It was not a casual nod or a polite acknowledgement. It was a real bow, full and sincere, the kind of bow one makes before something sacred. The teacher from the East, steeped in his own tradition with its own scriptures and its own practices and its own ways of understanding the divine, bowed to a symbol from another tradition entirely. The abbot felt tears come to his eyes. Later, when he spoke about the gathering, he said that this simple act meant more than all the words that had been exchanged, more than all the discussions and presentations and dialogues. In that one bow, the teacher had demonstrated something that could not be captured in concepts or arguments. What did that bow mean? It did not mean that the teacher was abandoning his own tradition or adopting the beliefs of another. He remained devoted to his path, committed to his practice, rooted in his own understanding. But he was not attached to his views in a way that prevented him from seeing the sacred in another form. He could recognize truth, beauty, and devotion even when they were clothed in unfamiliar garments. He could honor what was worthy of honor without needing it to fit his own categories. This is what becomes possible when we release our grip on being right. We do not become wishy-washy or indifferent. We do not lose our own ground. Instead, we become spacious enough to appreciate the ground that others stand on. We become humble enough to acknowledge that the mystery of existence is larger than any single set of beliefs can contain. One teacher expressed this beautifully. She said that if we want to see the essence of truth, we have to look deeply, profoundly, with complete sincerity. And when we look that deeply, we begin to see that the essence is the same, even when the forms are different. We begin to see that all genuine paths are rivers flowing toward the same ocean. This does not mean that all beliefs are equally true or that differences do not matter. It means that when we let go of attachment to our particular way of seeing, we can appreciate the genuine wisdom in other ways of seeing. We can learn from traditions not our own. We can find common ground with those who speak a different spiritual language. How do we practice this release of attachment to views? How do we loosen the grip of certainty without falling into confusion or relativism? One way is simply to notice how it feels when we are defending a position, to pay attention to the tightness in the body, the hardness in the heart, the urgent need to prove ourselves right. When we notice these sensations, we can pause. We can take a breath. We can ask ourselves, is this clinging? Is this attachment? Am I holding this view with wisdom, or am I holding it with my fists closed tight? Another way is to practice saying, I do not know, not as an evasion or a refusal to engage, but as an honest acknowledgement of the limits of our understanding. There is so much we do not know. There is so much that remains mysterious. To pretend otherwise is a kind of arrogance. To admit it is a kind of grace. We can also practice listening deeply to those who see things differently. Not listening in order to argue, not listening while preparing our rebuttal, but listening to understand. What is this person really saying? What experience lies behind their view? What truth might they be seeing that I have missed? The Buddha taught that we should not accept any teaching simply because it comes from a famous teacher or an ancient text or a respected tradition. He said we should test teachings in our own experience, see for ourselves what leads to harm and what leads to well-being, what leads to bondage and what leads to freedom. This is not a rejection of tradition, but a call to genuine inquiry, a call to hold even the most revered teachings with open hands. When we let go of the need to be right, something beautiful happens. We discover a peace that does not depend on having all the answers. We find a contentment that does not require everyone to agree with us. We experience a freedom that is not threatened by different perspectives or challenging questions. This peace is not the peace of indifference. It is not the peace of someone who does not care about truth. It is the peace of someone who cares about truth so much that they are willing to let go of their opinions in order to see more clearly. It is the peace of someone who has stopped defending and started opening. It is the peace of a heart that can bow. The revered teacher who bowed before the statue did not do it for show. He did not know anyone was watching. He did it because it was the natural movement of a heart that had let go of clinging, a mind that had been freed from the prison of fixed views, a being that could see the sacred wherever it appeared. This is what the path offers us. Not just freedom from attachment to pleasant sensations, but freedom from attachment to our own thoughts, our own opinions, our own certainty. A freedom that allows us to hold our views without being held by them. A freedom that bows to truth wherever it is found. And in that bowing, in that release, in that willingness to not know, we may find that we understand more than we ever did when we were certain. Let us pause here for a moment. Consider, just for this moment, what it might be like to hold things a little more gently. Take a breath, and when you are ready, we will continue together. We have been exploring the places where we cling, and we have begun to taste the freedom that comes when we loosen our grip, when we open our hands, when we allow ourselves to simply not know. But there is a difference between understanding these teachings and living them. There is a difference between nodding our heads when we hear that everything is impermanent and actually meeting impermanence when it arrives at our door. There is a difference between the peace we feel in quiet contemplation and the peace that remains when life shakes us to our very foundations. The deepest teachings are not learned from books or talks, or even from years of meditation. They are learned in the furnace of lived experience. They are forged in moments when everything we thought we knew is stripped away, when the ground we stood on crumbles beneath our feet, when we are left with nothing but the raw truth of existence. Let us explore the story of a woman who learned in just this way. A woman who descended into the depths of sorrow and emerged with a heart so vast, so tender, so unshakable, that she became a beacon of wisdom for countless others. She was born in a small village, in a time and place where women married young and devoted themselves to family. Her life, in its outward details, was much like the lives of the women around her. She took care of the house. She tended to her duties. She waited, as was the custom, for children to come. But children did not come easily. Years passed. She longed to be a mother, and that longing went unfulfilled, year after year. This was her first teaching in impermanence, though she did not know it then. The life she had imagined, the future she had expected, did not arrive on schedule. She learned to wait. She learned to hope. She learned to live with uncertainty. Eventually, children did come. The joy she felt was immense. After so many years of waiting, she held new life in her arms. She poured herself into motherhood with all the devotion of her patient heart. And then the unthinkable happened. 2 of her children did not survive childhood. We will not linger on the details of this loss, for there are no words adequate to describe a mother's grief when her children are taken from her. And then, as if this were not enough, her husband also passed away. In a short span of time, she lost nearly everything she loved. The life she had built, the family she had nurtured, the future she had imagined, all of it was gone. She was left alone with her one surviving child and a grief so vast it threatened to swallow her whole. She later said that she nearly died from that grief. For years, she was confined to her bed, too broken to participate in life, too shattered to see any way forward. This is not a story we tell lightly. It is not a story with an easy moral or a quick resolution. It is a story about the very worst that life can bring, the kind of loss that makes us question whether there is any meaning to existence at all. And yet, this is also a story about what becomes possible when we have nothing left to hold on to, when every support has been removed, when we are forced by the sheer weight of our circumstances to finally let go. For years, the world continued around her, but she was not part of it. She was lost in a place beyond hope, beyond comfort, beyond any teaching she had ever heard. And then someone suggested she try meditation. It was a simple suggestion, offered perhaps without much expectation. There was a monastery not far away. Perhaps sitting quietly, learning to calm the mind, might offer some small relief from her suffering. She had nothing to lose. She could barely walk, but she made her way to the monastery. She sat down. She began to practice. What happened next was profound. It was as though all those years of suffering had prepared her for something, as though her heart, broken so completely open, was now capable of receiving wisdom in a way that a protected heart could not, as though the very depth of her loss had carved out a space for something new to enter. She took to meditation like a parched person takes to water. Her concentration deepened rapidly. Her insight sharpened. The teachings that had been mere words to others became living truth in her direct experience. She began to see clearly the nature of impermanence that she had experienced so painfully in her life. But now she was seeing it not as an enemy, not as a cruel force that takes away what we love, but as the simple truth of how things are. Within a remarkably short time, she attained levels of realization that most practitioners spend lifetimes working toward. The woman who had been bedridden with grief became a fountain of wisdom and compassion. The woman who had lost nearly everything discovered something that could not be lost. What did she find in those depths of meditation? What transformed a grieving mother into a great teacher? She found, first of all, that the pain of her loss was not separate from the truth of impermanence. She had learned, in the most brutal way possible, that nothing in this life is permanent. Her children were impermanent. Her husband was impermanent. Her health, her happiness, her sense of who she was and what her life meant, all of it was impermanent. Before her losses, she had known this intellectually. Everyone knows that life is uncertain, that people we love will someday be gone. But knowing it in the mind is very different from knowing it in the bones. She had been forced to know it in her bones, in her blood, in every cell of her grieving body. And in that knowing, something paradoxical happened. Instead of making her bitter or hopeless, the full acceptance of impermanence set her free. She stopped fighting against reality. She stopped demanding that life be other than it is. She stopped clinging to what could not be held. This did not mean she stopped feeling. If anything, her capacity to feel deepened immeasurably. She became known for her extraordinary love, her warmth, her tenderness toward all who came to her. But her love was no longer mixed with grasping. Her tenderness was no longer shadowed by fear. She could give herself completely to each moment because she was no longer trying to hold on to anything. The Buddha taught that the root of suffering is clinging. She had learned this not from scripture but from life itself. And having learned it so deeply, she was able to teach it with a power that came from direct experience rather than mere understanding. As word of her realization spread, people began to seek her out. They came with their questions, their struggles, their sorrows. They came hoping for comfort, for guidance, for some taste of the peace that seemed to radiate from her presence. She gave them what they needed, but it was not always what they expected. Her compassion was vast, but it was not soft in the way we sometimes imagine compassion to be. It was fierce and clear, cutting through illusions. She had no patience for comfortable half-truths. She had looked directly into the face of impermanence, and she would not pretend it was otherwise. She knew that real peace does not come from avoiding difficult truths, but from meeting them fully. And so her teachings could sometimes be startling. She said what needed to be said, without softening it for the sake of comfort. She trusted that the truth, even when it was hard to hear, was ultimately more helpful than any pleasant falsehood. One of her students later recalled a teaching that she never forgot. It was a hard teaching, the student said, but it was exactly what was needed. The student had experienced a devastating loss. Her son had died. She came to the teacher consumed by grief, unable to understand why this had happened, unable to find any ground to stand on. The teacher looked at her with eyes that held both infinite tenderness and unflinching clarity. And she said something that the student would remember for the rest of her life. "Today your son has gone from this world. Why are you shocked?" The student was taken aback. This was not the gentle comfort she had expected. This was something else entirely. The teacher continued, "Everything is impermanent. Your life is impermanent. Your husband is impermanent. Your son is impermanent. Your possessions are impermanent. Everything is impermanent. There is nothing that is permanent." She went on, "When you are alive, you might think, this is my daughter, this is my husband, this is my property, this belongs to me. But when you are gone, nothing is yours." And then she said the words that pierced deepest of all. "You think you are a serious practitioner, but you must understand that everything is impermanent." Notice what the teacher did not say. She did not say, "Why are you sad?" Grief is natural. Grief is human. Grief is the heart's response to loss, and there is nothing wrong with it. The teacher herself had grieved more deeply than most people ever will. She said, "Why are you shocked?" This is a crucial distinction. Sadness is the natural response to loss. Shock is something else. Shock is what we feel when something happens that we did not believe was possible. Shock is the collision between our expectations and reality. Shock is the mind's protest that this should not be, that this was not part of the plan, that somehow a mistake has been made. The teacher was not asking her student to stop feeling sad. She was asking her student to examine the shock, to look at the belief underneath it, the belief that somehow her son should have been exempt from impermanence, that somehow this loss should not have happened, that somehow she should have been protected from the truth that touches everyone. This is what it means to really learn that everything is impermanent. Not to have it as a concept in the mind, filed away with other spiritual teachings, but to have it in the bones, to live from it, to meet each moment knowing that it will pass, to love each person knowing that we will one day part, to hold each experience knowing that it is already on its way to becoming memory. When we know that everything is passing, we stop taking things for granted. We stop postponing our love for some future moment. We stop waiting until conditions are perfect to be fully present. We show up now, because now is all we have. The teacher's words to her grieving student might seem harsh if we do not understand where they came from. They came from a woman who had lost 2 children of her own. They came from a woman who knew exactly how that student was feeling, who had felt it herself so deeply that she nearly died from it. This was not philosophy. This was not a teaching learned from books. This was truth that had been forged in the fire of lived experience. And because it had been forged in that fire, it had the power to reach into the student's heart and plant a seed of genuine understanding. The teacher was not dismissing the student's grief. She was honoring it by telling her the truth. She was saying, in essence, I know this pain. I have lived this pain. And I am telling you that the way through it is not to fight against reality, but to finally, fully accept it. Not to pretend that impermanence is not real, but to let it in so completely that it transforms you. There is a kind of compassion that protects people from hard truths. And there is a kind of compassion that trusts people enough to tell them what they need to hear. The teacher practiced the second kind. It was not gentle in the conventional sense, but it was exactly what was needed to wake the student up from the dream of permanence that causes so much unnecessary suffering. The woman who had lost so much became a teacher of extraordinary power. Those who met her spoke of her presence, the sense of peace and love that radiated from her. She was tiny in stature, but immense in spirit. She had looked into the abyss and found, at the very bottom, something that could not be destroyed. This is the promise of the spiritual path. Not that we will be protected from loss. Not that we will be exempt from suffering, but that there is something in us, some dimension of our being, that remains whole even when everything around us is falling apart. The Buddha called this the unshakable deliverance of mind. It is a peace that does not depend on circumstances. It is a freedom that cannot be taken away by any loss, any change, any upheaval in the external world. This woman found that peace not in spite of her suffering, but through it. Her losses did not destroy her. They broke her open to something larger than her individual life, something that could hold all the sorrow and all the joy without being overwhelmed by either. This is what becomes possible when we truly learn that everything is impermanent. Not despair, but freedom. Not coldness, but a love so vast it can embrace everything. Not withdrawal from life, but a deeper engagement with each precious, passing moment. The teacher has long since passed from this world. The student who received that fierce teaching on impermanence has also passed. Their names and the details of their lives have faded into history. But the teaching remains. It passes from heart to heart, generation to generation, carried by all those who have heard it and been changed by it. Why are you shocked? Everything is impermanent. These words are not meant to wound. They are meant to wake us up. They are meant to shake us out of the dream that we can somehow hold on to things that are already passing. They are an invitation to stop fighting against the nature of reality and to finally make peace with it. The woman who lost her children and found enlightenment did not become a teacher so that others could admire her attainment. She became a teacher so that others might find the same freedom she had found. She wanted them to know that it is possible to love without clinging, to live without fear, to meet each moment fully, even though it will soon be gone. This is her gift to us. This is the fruit of her suffering, offered freely to all who are willing to receive it. Everything is impermanent, and in that truth, if we can truly take it in, is the doorway to a peace that cannot be shaken. Let us pause here for a moment. These are not easy truths to sit with. Take a breath. Let it go. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have walked through some of the most common places where the heart gets caught. We have seen how we grasp at pleasant sensations and experiences. We have noticed how tightly we hold our views and opinions. We have witnessed a great teacher point her student toward the deepest acceptance of impermanence, forged in the fire of unbearable loss. Now we turn to a more subtle trap. It is a trap that does not catch everyone, but it catches many who walk the spiritual path. It is, in some ways, the most seductive trap of all, because it is made not of ordinary pleasures, but of extraordinary ones. It is made not of worldly experiences, but of sacred ones. It is the trap of clinging to spiritual experiences themselves. This may seem strange at first. After all, are we not practicing in order to have certain experiences? Are we not seeking peace, clarity, insight, perhaps even awakening? How can these things become traps? And yet the ancient teachers warned us about this again and again. They said that even the most beautiful experiences on the path can become obstacles if we cling to them. They said that the light itself can blind us if we grasp at it too tightly. Let us explore this paradox together. Imagine a meditator who has been practicing for some time, perhaps months, perhaps years. At first, the practice was difficult. The mind wandered constantly. The body ached. Doubt arose. Boredom arose. It seemed like nothing was happening, like sitting still was just a waste of time. But the meditator persisted. Day after day, sitting after sitting, the practice continued. And gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, something began to shift. The mind started to settle. The restlessness began to calm. There were moments, brief at first, when the usual chatter of thoughts would quiet down, and in that quiet, something else would emerge. A sense of spaciousness, a feeling of peace, a clarity that seemed to illuminate everything from within. As practice deepened, these experiences became more frequent and more vivid. Sometimes there would be waves of joy arising for no apparent reason, filling the body with a kind of inner light. Sometimes there would be profound stillness, a sense of being completely present, completely here, without any pull toward past or future. Sometimes there would be insights, sudden understandings that seemed to reveal the very nature of reality. These are genuine experiences. They are signs that practice is bearing fruit. They are tastes of the freedom that the teachings promise. And they are absolutely wonderful. They are also, potentially, a trap. There is an old saying that a chain made of gold binds just as tightly as a chain made of iron. It may be more beautiful, more precious, more desirable, but it is still a chain. When we have powerful spiritual experiences, something in us naturally wants to hold on to them. We want to repeat them. We want to make them last. We want to return to that state of peace or joy or clarity and stay there forever. This is completely understandable. After all, these experiences feel so much better than our ordinary confused state. Why would we not want more of them? But here is the problem. The moment we start grasping at these experiences, we have forgotten the central teaching of the path. We have forgotten that freedom comes through non-clinging. We have traded one form of attachment for another, one cage for another, one chain for another. The Buddha did not teach that liberation comes through having beautiful experiences. He taught that liberation comes through not clinging to any experience at all. This includes the most exalted states of meditation. This includes the most profound spiritual insights. This includes the very factors of awakening themselves. A teacher from the Tibetan tradition put it this way. He said that if we have interesting experiences during or after meditation, we should avoid making anything special of them. To spend time thinking about experiences, he said, is simply a distraction. Let that sink in. To spend time thinking about our spiritual experiences, even the most wonderful ones, is simply a distraction. There is a striking teaching in the Buddhist tradition about a stage of practice where the very qualities we have been cultivating become obstacles. It is called, in some translations, the corruptions of insight. Think about what this means. The factors of awakening, the very qualities that lead to liberation, can become corruptions. Mindfulness can become a corruption. Concentration can become a corruption. Joy, tranquility, equanimity, all of these can become corruptions. How is this possible? It happens when we become attached to these qualities, when we start to identify with them, when we begin to think, I am someone who has deep concentration. I am someone who experiences profound peace. I am someone who is making spiritual progress. In that moment, the experience that was leading us toward freedom becomes another brick in the wall of the self we are trying to see through. The light that was illuminating the path becomes a shiny object that distracts us from the path itself. This is why the great teachers emphasize again and again that the goal is not any particular state, no matter how exalted. The goal is liberation from clinging itself. And we cannot reach that goal by clinging to liberation. Let us explore a common pattern that many practitioners encounter. A meditator begins to experience states of great light and brightness during meditation. The mind becomes luminous. Everything seems to glow from within. There is a sense of expansion, of vastness, of being connected to something much larger than the ordinary self. These are wonderful experiences. They often bring a deep sense of peace and well-being that can last for hours or even days after the meditation session ends. But then something shifts. The meditator starts to look for the light. Before even sitting down, there is an expectation, a hope, a subtle reaching toward that luminous state. And when it does not come, there is disappointment. When the meditation is ordinary, there is a sense of failure. When the light fades, there is a kind of grief. Do you see what has happened? The light, which was a gift, has become a demand. The experience, which arose naturally, has become something the meditator is trying to manufacture. The freedom that was tasted has been traded for a new form of bondage. This pattern can repeat with any kind of spiritual experience. Profound stillness becomes something we chase. Insights become something we try to recreate. Even experiences of selflessness can become something we cling to, which is a particularly subtle trap. The way out is always the same. Let go. Do not try to recreate past experiences. Do not expect future experiences to match past ones. Meet each moment fresh, without comparing it to any other moment. Practice non-clinging, even with the fruits of practice. There is a teaching that cuts through all of this complexity with beautiful simplicity. It goes something like this: it does not matter to what you do not cling. Read that again slowly. It does not matter to what you do not cling. This means that we do not have to wait for some special experience in order to practice non-clinging. We do not have to attain a particular state before we can let go. Whatever is arising right now, in this very moment, is a perfect opportunity to not cling. Boredom is arising? Do not cling. Peace is arising? Do not cling. Restlessness is arising? Do not cling. Profound insight is arising? Do not cling. The content of experience does not determine whether we are free. Our relationship to that content does. We can be free in the midst of difficulty if we do not cling to wanting it to be different. We can be bound in the midst of bliss if we cling to wanting it to continue. This is a radical reorientation. We usually think that we need to get somewhere, achieve something, attain some state that we do not currently have. But this teaching says that freedom is available right now, with whatever is present, if we simply do not cling. It does not matter to what you do not cling. You might as well not cling now. We spoke earlier of the open hand, the hand that receives without grasping, that holds without clutching, that allows things to come and allows them to go. This same image applies to our spiritual experiences. We can receive the gifts of practice with open hands. We can appreciate the peace when it comes. We can be grateful for the insight when it arises. We can enjoy the light, the stillness, the joy. But we do not close our fingers around these gifts. We do not try to possess them. We do not build our identity around them. We let them come. We let them be. We let them go. One teacher described practice this way. She said that it is simply a matter of letting go all along the way. The theme of non-clinging covers everything, she said, from beginning to end. From beginning to end. This means that non-clinging is not something we achieve at the end of the path after years of effort. It is the path itself. Every moment of letting go is a moment of freedom. Every moment of non-clinging is a taste of liberation. We do not practice in order to eventually not cling. We practice non-clinging now, with whatever is present, and we do it again in the next moment, and again, and again. There is something freeing about realizing that spiritual experiences are not the point. It takes the pressure off. We do not have to chase after special states. We do not have to feel like failures when meditation is ordinary. We do not have to compare our practice to anyone else's or to any ideal in our minds. Every moment of practice is complete in itself. A moment of noticing the breath without any fireworks is just as valuable as a moment of profound insight if we meet it with the same non-clinging awareness. A moment of boredom, fully experienced and released, is just as much a step on the path as a moment of bliss. This is good news for all of us who spend most of our meditation time in ordinary states. We are not doing it wrong. We are not missing out. The opportunity for freedom is right here, in this ordinary moment, if we simply do not cling. The Buddha himself made this clear. He said that whatever arises, whatever feelings appear, whether pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, we should abide contemplating impermanence in those feelings. Not just the special feelings, not just the spiritual feelings, whatever feelings arise. This is the great equalizer. It means that every moment is practice time. Every experience is grist for the mill. Nothing is wasted, and nothing is more important than anything else. There is only this moment, and the question of whether we are clinging or letting go. A wise teacher once said that if we want to see the real essence of the teachings, we have to look deeply and profoundly, not at special experiences, but at whatever is arising. Not at the fireworks, but at the ordinary flow of moment after moment. She said that then it is simply a matter of letting go, all along the way, from beginning to end. This is the teaching stripped down to its essence. Look deeply at what is arising. Let it go. Look at the next thing. Let it go. Do not make anything special. Do not cling to anything. Just keep letting go. It sounds simple, and in a way it is. But simple does not mean easy. The habit of clinging is deep. It operates even in the most refined levels of our experience. We can be clinging to subtle states without even knowing we are doing it. This is why practice is a lifetime's work. Not because there is some distant goal we are trying to reach, but because the opportunity to let go is always present and always fresh. There is always something arising. There is always an invitation to not cling. The golden trap is seductive because it is made of gold. The experiences it offers are genuinely beautiful, genuinely precious. But even gold becomes a burden if we carry it everywhere. Even the most beautiful experience becomes a prison if we cannot let it go. The way through is always the same. Open the hand. Release the grip. Let this moment be what it is, without needing it to continue. Let the next moment arrive fresh, without comparing it to what came before. This is the practice that leads to freedom. Not the practice of attaining special states, but the practice of not clinging to any state at all. Not the pursuit of spiritual experiences, but the willingness to let every experience pass through like water through an open hand. Let us pause here for a moment. Take a breath. Let it go. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have explored many of the places where the heart gets caught. We have seen how we cling to pleasant experiences and to our cherished views. We have witnessed the fierce compassion of a teacher who learned impermanence through unbearable loss. We have discovered how even the most beautiful spiritual experiences can become golden chains if we grasp at them. Through all of this, a single truth keeps appearing, like a thread woven through everything we have explored. That truth is impermanence. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. What arises will pass away. We have heard this teaching many times now. Perhaps we have begun to understand it with our minds. But there is a difference between understanding impermanence as an idea and knowing it as a living reality in our own direct experience. The ancient teachers knew this difference well. They knew that concepts, however true, can only take us so far. At some point, we must turn from thinking about the truth to actually seeing it, feeling it, living it moment by moment. The Buddha himself said something remarkable about this. He said that it is better to live a single day seeing the arising and passing of all things than to live 100 years without seeing it. A single day of truly seeing, he said, is worth more than a century of not seeing. What could this mean? What is it about directly perceiving impermanence that matters so much? To begin to answer this question, let us turn our attention to something very simple. Let us listen to a bell. In many meditation halls around the world, a bell is used to mark the beginning and end of practice. It might be a large bowl made of metal, struck with a wooden mallet. It might be a small handbell with a clear, high tone. It might be a simple chime, the kind you could hold in the palm of your hand. The form does not matter. What matters is the sound, and what the sound can teach us. Imagine, if you will, that such a bell is about to be struck. The room is quiet. The meditators are settled. There is a moment of stillness, of waiting, of not yet. And then the mallet touches the rim of the bell, and sound is born. It comes suddenly, a clear, bright tone that fills the space. It is loud and present and alive. It seems to have weight, almost substance. It fills your ears, vibrates in your chest, announces itself to every corner of the room. This is the arising. This is the moment of birth. But already, even as the sound seems fullest, something is happening. The initial brightness is beginning to soften. The sharp edge of the tone is rounding, mellowing, becoming gentler. Listen. The sound is changing. It is not the same sound it was a moment ago. It is quieter now, less insistent. It has begun its journey from presence toward absence, from being toward not being. This is the nature of all born things. From the moment of their arising, they are already on their way to passing. There is no pause, no holding steady, no staying the same. There is only the continuous movement from arising toward dissolution. The bell does not try to hold on to its sound. The sound does not struggle to remain. It simply follows its nature, which is to arise and then to fade, to appear and then to disappear. Listen more closely now. The sound is quieter still. You have to pay more attention to hear it. It is slipping away, moment by moment, fading back toward the silence from which it came. Where does it go? Can you find the boundary between sound and silence? Can you locate the precise moment when hearing becomes not hearing? And now there is silence again. Or is there? Listen to this silence. It is not empty. It is not nothing. It is a silence that knows something has passed through it. It is a silence that holds the echo of the bell, even though the bell can no longer be heard. This too is part of the teaching. The sound arose from silence, unfolded in silence, and returned to silence. Silence was there before, during, and after. The sound came and went, but the silence remained. There is something in us like this silence. Something that remains present while experiences come and go. Something that is not destroyed by the passing of any particular sound or sensation or thought. We will explore this more deeply later. For now, simply notice that even in the absence of sound, awareness continues. Presence continues. The capacity to hear continues, even when there is nothing to hear. This is what the bell teaches, if we are willing to learn. Now here is the remarkable thing. The sound of the bell is not teaching us something unique to bells. It is showing us the truth about everything. Every experience we have follows this same pattern. Arising, unfolding, passing away. A thought appears in the mind. It seems solid, important, compelling. But watch it. Where does it come from? How long does it stay? Where does it go? If you attend carefully, you will see that thoughts are just like the sound of the bell. They arise from somewhere mysterious. They linger for a time, and then they dissolve back into the silence of the mind. A sensation arises in the body. An ache, an itch, a warmth, a tingling. It seems so present, so real. But watch it. It too is changing, always changing. It shifts in intensity, moves in location, transforms in quality, and eventually it fades. Even pain, which can seem so solid and permanent when we are in the midst of it, is actually a flow of changing sensations, never the same from one moment to the next. An emotion swells in the heart. Joy or sorrow, excitement or boredom, love or fear. It can feel like it will last forever, especially when it is intense. But watch it. Emotions too are like the sound of the bell. They arise, they fill our experience for a time, and then they fade. No emotion has ever lasted. No feeling has ever stayed the same. This is what the Buddha wanted us to see. Not impermanence as a philosophy, but impermanence as the living texture of every moment of our lives. Usually, when we practice meditation, we pay attention to what is arising. We notice the breath. We notice thoughts. We notice sounds and sensations. This is good and important. It is the foundation of awareness. But we can go deeper. We can also notice what happens to what arises. This is a subtle shift, but it makes a great difference. Instead of simply noting sound or thought or sensation, we watch the entire life cycle of the experience. We see it being born. We see it changing. We see it passing away. The Buddha gave very clear instructions about this practice. He said that whatever feelings arise, whether pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, we should abide contemplating impermanence in those feelings. We should watch them fade. We should notice their passing. And then he said something that points directly at liberation. He said that when we practice this way, we do not cling to anything in the world. When we do not cling, there is no agitation. And when there is no agitation, we find peace. This is a direct path. See the arising and passing. Do not cling. Find peace. It sounds simple, and in essence it is. But it requires a quality of attention that we are not used to giving. It requires that we slow down, that we look carefully, that we become intimate with the moment-to-moment flow of our experience. A teacher once said that the entire path to freedom is contained in the sound of a single bell. If we could truly hear that sound, truly be present with it, from its arising through its fading, we would understand everything we need to understand. Why would this be so? Because in truly hearing the bell, we would see impermanence directly. We would experience the arising and passing, not as a concept, but as a lived reality. We would know, in our bones, that nothing can be held, that everything is flowing, that there is nothing solid to grasp. And in that knowing, the grasping would naturally relax. Why hold on to what cannot be held? Why cling to what is already passing? Why build our security on what is constantly dissolving? The sound of the bell teaches us this without words. It does not argue or explain. It simply shows us arising, passing, arising, passing. This is how things are. And when we truly see how things are, we stop fighting against reality. We stop demanding that things be permanent when they cannot be. We stop causing ourselves suffering by insisting on holding what cannot be held. This is why the Buddha said that a single day of seeing the arising and passing of things is worth more than 100 years of not seeing it. Because when we see, we are free. And when we do not see, we remain bound, no matter how many years we live. You do not need a special bell to practice this. You do not need to be in a meditation hall. You can practice right now, wherever you are, with whatever sounds are present. Perhaps there is the hum of a machine somewhere nearby. Listen to it. Even a continuous sound is changing. It rises and falls in volume. It shifts subtly in tone. It is not the same from one moment to the next. Perhaps there is the sound of wind, or traffic, or birds, or distant voices. Each sound arises from silence, exists for a time, and fades back into silence. Each sound is a bell, teaching the same lesson. Perhaps there is simply the sound of your own breathing. The inhale arises, crests, passes. The exhale arises, crests, passes. Each breath is complete in itself, never to be repeated, arising fresh and then dissolving completely. This is meditation. This is practice. Not thinking about impermanence, but directly perceiving it. Not believing in the arising and passing, but seeing it, hearing it, feeling it, moment by moment by moment. When we listen in this way, something becomes very clear. There is nothing to hold on to. The sound of the bell cannot be grasped. The breath cannot be possessed. The thought, the sensation, the emotion, none of it can be kept. This might sound like bad news. If nothing can be held, what hope do we have? If everything passes, what is the point? But the ancient teachers discovered something surprising. It is precisely because nothing can be held that we can finally be at peace. It is precisely because everything passes that we can finally stop struggling. Think about it. So much of our suffering comes from trying to hold on to things that are slipping away. We grasp at pleasures and they dissolve in our hands. We cling to people and circumstances and they change despite our clinging. We build elaborate structures of security and they crumble like sand castles at high tide. This grasping is exhausting. It never works, and yet we keep doing it again and again because we have not truly seen that it cannot work, that it will never work, that the nature of experience is to flow and change and pass. But when we finally see this, when we truly understand that nothing can be grasped, something relaxes at the deepest level. We stop the exhausting effort of trying to hold the unholdable. We let the river flow. We let the sound fade. We let each moment be what it is and then let it go. And in that letting go, we find a peace that does not depend on anything staying the same. Let us bring this teaching into the most intimate territory of all, the breath that is moving through your body right now. Feel the inhale beginning. There is a first moment, a stirring, a drawing in. The chest expands. The belly rises. Air fills the lungs. This is the arising. Feel the inhale continuing. It grows, deepens, fills you. There is a moment that feels like fullness, like completion. But already, even at this peak, the exhale is waiting to be born. Feel the exhale beginning. There is a release, a letting go. The air flows out. The chest settles. The belly falls. This is the passing away. Feel the exhale ending. The breath thins, quiets, dissolves. For a moment, there is stillness, an absence of breath, a space between. And then, without any effort from you, the next inhale begins to arise. This is happening right now. This has been happening since the moment of your birth. Arising and passing. Arising and passing. Each breath a complete life cycle. Each breath a bell ringing and fading into silence. You cannot hold even a single breath. Try it and you will see. The breath insists on flowing. It will not be captured or possessed. It comes as a gift and leaves as a gift, and our only role is to receive it and release it again and again, for as long as we are alive. When we align ourselves with this flow, something beautiful happens. We stop fighting. We stop demanding that life be other than it is. We find a rhythm that has always been there, waiting for us to notice it and surrender to it. This is not resignation or defeat. It is wisdom. It is the recognition that life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be lived. It is the understanding that peace does not come from controlling the flow, but from joining it, from becoming one with the arising and passing that is the heartbeat of existence. The bell sounds and fades. The breath comes and goes. Thoughts appear and dissolve. Sensations flicker and change. Everything is moving, always moving, never stopping, never holding still. And right in the middle of all this movement, there is the possibility of profound peace. Not the peace of things staying the same, but the peace of no longer needing them to. Not the peace of grasping successfully, but the peace of finally letting go. This is what the bell teaches. This is what the breath teaches. This is what every moment teaches, if we have ears to hear and hearts willing to receive. Let us pause here and simply listen. Whatever sounds are present in your environment right now, let them be your teachers. And let this listening soften something in you. Take a breath, and when you are ready, we will continue together. We have listened to the bell and heard it fade into silence. We have felt the breath arise and pass away. We have begun to see that everything in our experience is flowing, changing, impermanent. Nothing stays the same. Nothing can be grasped. And yet, through all of this flowing, there seems to be someone here experiencing it all. Someone who hears the bell. Someone who feels the breath. Someone who notices the arising and passing of thoughts and sensations and emotions. Who is this someone? This is perhaps the deepest question we can ask. It is the question that leads to the heart of the teaching on non-clinging. Because if there is anything we cling to more tightly than pleasant experiences, more tightly than our cherished views, more tightly even than our most profound spiritual insights, it is our sense of being a self, our sense of being someone. The Buddha taught that this clinging to self is the root of all our suffering. Not the self itself, but the clinging to it, the identification with it, the belief that somewhere in the midst of all this flowing experience, there is a solid, permanent someone to whom it all belongs. What if we looked for this someone? What if we turned our attention toward the one who seems to be experiencing everything and tried to find them? What would we discover? The first place we usually look for ourselves is in the body. This seems so obvious that we rarely question it. When someone asks where we are, we point to our body. When we look in a mirror, we see the body and say, "That is me." When we think about ourselves, an image of the body usually comes to mind. And yet, when we look more closely, is the body really who we are? The body is constantly changing. The cells that make up your body today are not the same cells that made it up 10 years ago. Your skin renews itself every few weeks. Your bones rebuild themselves over years. The body you have now is not the body you had as a child, and it will not be the body you have in old age. If the body is constantly changing, which body is you? The body of your childhood? The body of your youth? The body you have in this moment? The body you will have tomorrow? There is a teaching that points to something interesting about our identification with the body. It says that we think of the body as self, as me, largely because it is wrapped up so neatly. The skin holds everything together in one package. We look at this package and think, yes, that is who I am. But inside that package, there are organs and fluids and processes that we would never identify as ourselves. If someone showed you an image of your liver, you would not say, "That is me." If you saw your blood under a microscope, you would not feel that you were looking at yourself. And yet these are as much part of the body as the face you see in the mirror. A great Indian sage once said that to identify with the body and yet seek happiness is like trying to cross a river on the back of a crocodile. The body cannot provide the stable ground we seek. It is changing, aging, subject to illness and injury. To build our sense of self upon it is to build upon something that will inevitably shift and sink beneath us. This does not mean the body is bad or that we should reject it. It simply means that when we look for ourselves in the body, we do not find anything permanent, anything stable, anything that could truly be called me. If we are not the body, perhaps we are the mind. Perhaps the self is to be found in our thoughts, our memories, our beliefs, our stories about who we are. We all have such stories. I am someone who grew up in a certain place. I am someone who had certain experiences. I am someone who believes certain things, values certain things, hopes for certain things. These stories feel very personal, very intimate. They seem to define who we are. But look at a thought. Any thought. Where does it come from? Can you find its source? One moment the mind is empty, and the next moment a thought appears. You did not choose to think it. It simply arose, like a bubble rising to the surface of a pond. And where does the thought go? It appears, it lingers for a moment, and then it dissolves. Another thought takes its place, and then another. The mind is like a river of thoughts, constantly flowing, never stopping. If thoughts are constantly arising and passing, which thought is you? The thought you had a moment ago? That one is already gone. The thought you are having now? It too will pass. The thought you will have next? It has not yet arisen. We spend so much time lost in thought that we come to believe we are our thoughts. But thoughts are just weather passing through the sky of the mind. They are not the sky itself. To identify with thoughts is to identify with clouds while ignoring the vast blue expanse that holds them. And what about the stories we tell about ourselves? These too are just thoughts, just narratives constructed from memory and imagination. They change over time. We remember things differently as we age. We reinterpret our past in light of our present. The story of who we are is not fixed. It is a work of ongoing fiction, revised and edited with each passing year. Perhaps then, the self is to be found in our emotions. Our feelings seem so intimate, so personal. When we are happy, it feels like we are happy. When we are sad, it feels like we are sad. Emotions seem to be at the very core of who we are. And yet, emotions too are just experiences arising and passing. Watch an emotion next time one appears. Notice how it comes from somewhere unknown, fills you for a time, and then fades away. Notice how it changes in intensity, how it mixes with other emotions, how it transforms into something else. We often speak as though emotions are what we are. I am angry, we say. I am afraid. I am excited. But this way of speaking is misleading. It would be more accurate to say, anger is arising in awareness. Fear is present. Excitement is happening. When we say, I am angry, we fuse our sense of self with the emotion. We become the anger. And when we are the anger, we have no space from it. We act from it, speak from it, make decisions from it. We are carried away by it like a leaf in a stream. But when we notice anger is arising, there is space. There is something that sees the anger, that knows the anger is present, that is not itself swept away by the anger. The emotion is still there, still felt, still experienced. But it is not who we are. It is something happening within the larger space of awareness. This is true of all emotions. Joy is something that arises and passes. Sorrow is something that arises and passes. Love, fear, excitement, boredom, all of it comes and goes. None of it is permanent. None of it is who we truly are. If we are not the body, not the thoughts, not the emotions, perhaps we are the one who observes all of these. Perhaps the true self is the witness, the awareness that knows the body, that sees the thoughts, that feels the emotions. This is a very subtle idea, and it can seem like a safe place to rest. Okay, I am not my body, not my thoughts, not my emotions. But surely I am the awareness that knows all of these. Surely I am the witness, the observer, the one who watches the whole show. Many meditation traditions point toward this awareness. They guide us to step back from the content of experience and rest in the knowing of it. And this is a valuable step. It creates space. It breaks the identification with constantly changing phenomena. It gives us a taste of peace. But the most penetrating teachings go one step further. They ask us to look at the witness itself. to turn attention toward the one who is aware, to look for the looker. And when we do this, something remarkable happens. There is an ancient story about a seeker who had heard of a great master living in a cave high in the mountains. This master was said to have attained the deepest realization, the most profound understanding. The seeker was suffering greatly and was determined to receive the teaching that would set him free. After a long and difficult journey, the seeker finally arrived at the cave. The master was sitting in stillness, eyes half closed, utterly at peace. The seeker approached and said, "Please, I beg you, teach me the way. My mind is tormented. Please show me how to find peace." The master looked at him with great kindness and said simply, "Bring me your mind, and I will pacify it for you." The seeker was taken aback. "Bring my mind? How does one do that?" He sat down to look for his mind, to find this thing that was causing him so much suffering. He looked in his thoughts, but thoughts were just coming and going. None of them was the mind itself. He looked in his emotions, but emotions too were just arising and passing. None of them was the mind itself. He looked for the thinker behind the thoughts, but when he searched for the thinker, there was nothing to find. He looked for the feeler behind the feelings, but when he searched for the feeler, there was only emptiness. Finally, after searching everywhere, he returned to the master and said, "I have looked for my mind, but I cannot find it anywhere." The master smiled and said, "There, I have pacified it for you." What did the master mean? How did searching for the mind and not finding it pacify the seeker's suffering? When we believe there is a solid self at the center of our experience, we feel that this self must be protected, defended, enhanced. We worry about what will happen to it. We fear for its safety. We struggle to get what it wants and avoid what it fears. All of this is suffering. But when we look for this self and cannot find it, something releases. The one we were trying to protect turns out to be unfindable. The one we were worried about cannot be located. The solid center we assumed was there reveals itself to be nothing. Emptiness. Open space. This is not a loss. It is a liberation. We are freed from the burden of defending something that does not exist. We are released from the exhausting effort of maintaining a self that was only ever a construction, a mirage, a trick of the mind. The mind is still functioning. Thoughts still arise. Emotions still come and go. The body still breathes and moves. But there is no longer a tight identification with any of it. There is no longer a sense that these experiences are happening to me, that I must control them, that my happiness depends on arranging them correctly. Instead, there is just experience, unfolding moment by moment. There is just awareness, knowing what arises. There is just life, living itself, and in this there is profound peace. When we stop identifying with the body, with thoughts, with emotions, and even with the sense of being a witness, what remains? Awareness remains. Knowing remains. But it is awareness without a center. It is knowing without a knower. It is experience without someone to whom it is happening. This may sound strange or even frightening. We are so used to thinking of ourselves as the center of our experience. We are so accustomed to the feeling of being a someone who is having a life. But consider this. In deep sleep, there is no sense of self. The witness is absent. The observer is not there. And yet, when you wake up, you say you slept peacefully. Who slept? Who was at peace? Or consider moments of complete absorption. Perhaps you have been so engaged in an activity, so lost in music or beauty or flow, that for a time there was no sense of self at all. There was just the experience, unfolding without a center. And often, when the self returns, we notice that those selfless moments were the most peaceful, the most alive, the most deeply satisfying. The self is not the source of our aliveness. It is actually a kind of contraction, a limiting of the natural openness of awareness. When the self relaxes, when identification loosens, we do not disappear. We become more present, more intimate with experience, more fully here. The Buddha summarized this teaching in words that can echo through a lifetime of practice. He said, "Nothing whatsoever is to be clung to as I or mine. Nothing whatsoever. Not the body, not the thoughts, not the emotions, not the awareness itself. Nothing is to be held as self, as belonging to a self, as defining a self. This is not a commandment or a rule. It is a description of freedom. When we cling to things as self, we suffer. When we stop clinging, we are at peace." The seeker who went to the master was suffering because he believed in a solid self that was in trouble. When he looked for that self and could not find it, the trouble evaporated. There was nothing there to be troubled. There was nothing there to pacify. The search itself was the liberation. We can try this for ourselves. Right now, in this moment. Who is hearing these words? Who is aware of this moment? Look for that one. Search everywhere. Turn attention back toward its source. What do you find? When we look for the self and do not find it, we are touching the great mystery at the heart of existence. Awareness is here. Experience is happening. Something is knowing this moment. But that something cannot be grasped, cannot be located, cannot be pinned down and defined. The Zen masters call this not knowing. Not the not knowing of ignorance, but the not knowing of wonder. The not knowing of a mind that has stopped pretending to understand what cannot be understood. We do not need to figure this out. We do not need to arrive at a conclusion about what the self is or is not. We simply need to look, to inquire, to be curious about our own nature. And in that looking, in that inquiry, in that openness, something loosens. The grip of self-identification relaxes. The burden of being a someone softens. We begin to taste the freedom of not having anything to defend, anything to protect, anything to hold together. This is not the end of functioning. We still think, still feel, still act in the world. But we do so with more lightness, more ease, more flow. We are no longer carrying the heavy weight of self. We are simply life, living, awareness, being aware. This moment, unfolding. Let us pause here for a moment. You do not have to be someone right now. You can simply be. Take a breath. Let it go. And when you are ready, we will continue together. We have traveled far together. We have walked through autumn forests and listened to the fading sound of bells. We have sat with wandering sages and grieving mothers, with meditators choosing bananas and teachers bowing before statues. We have explored the many places where the heart gets caught, the many ways we cling to what cannot be held. And in our last exploration, we turned attention back upon itself and discovered something remarkable. When we look for the one who is experiencing all of this, we cannot find them. The self we assumed was at the center of everything reveals itself to be unfindable, unlocatable, empty. This is not a loss. It is a doorway. Now we come to the heart of the teaching. Now we gather all these threads together and see where they lead. Now we ask the most practical question of all. How do we actually live this? How do we move from understanding to freedom? The answer has been with us all along, woven through every story and every teaching. It is simple enough to say in a single breath. It is profound enough to fill a lifetime of practice. The answer is, let go. The Buddha did not leave us to figure this out on our own. He gave very clear, very practical guidance for how to free the heart. And his instructions were not abstract or philosophical. They were immediate and experiential. He said, whatever feelings arise, whether pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, abide contemplating impermanence in those feelings. Contemplate their fading away. Contemplate the letting go of those feelings. This is such a direct teaching. It does not require special circumstances or advanced abilities. It simply asks us to notice what is already happening and to see it clearly. Feelings are arising right now. Pleasant sensations, unpleasant sensations, neutral sensations. They come uninvited and they leave without asking permission. This is happening all the time, in every moment of our lives. The Buddha's instruction is to be present with this arising and passing, to really see it, to contemplate, which means to look carefully, to pay close attention, to stay with it and let it reveal its nature. And what is its nature? Impermanence, fading away, letting go. When we see this clearly enough, when we really understand that every feeling is already in the process of passing, something shifts. We stop clinging so tightly. We stop demanding that pleasant feelings stay and unpleasant feelings leave. We stop building our happiness on the foundation of what is constantly dissolving. And then, the Buddha said, something wonderful happens. When we practice this way, we do not cling to anything in the world. When we do not cling, there is no agitation. When there is no agitation, we personally realize peace. It is important to understand what this teaching is not saying. It is not telling us to become cold or distant from our experience. It is not asking us to withdraw from life or to stop feeling altogether. There is a word in English that can cause confusion here. The word is detachment. Sometimes the spiritual path is described as a path of detachment, and this can sound like a path of pulling away, of not caring, of becoming indifferent to what happens. But this is not what the Buddha taught. He taught non-attachment, which is something quite different. Non-attachment does not mean pulling away from experience. It means not clinging to experience. It does not mean stopping our feelings. It means not grasping at our feelings. The difference is subtle but crucial. A person who is detached has built a wall between themselves and life. They have withdrawn behind defenses. They may appear calm, but it is the calm of disconnection, of numbness, of not fully being here. A person who is non-attached is fully present. They feel everything. They engage completely with life, but they do not cling. They do not grasp. They receive each moment with open hands and let it go when it passes. This is not less alive than clinging. It is more alive. It is life lived without the constant tension of trying to hold on to what is flowing. It is love without fear, joy without grasping, presence without the burden of self. One of the great gifts of this teaching is that it does not postpone freedom to some distant future. It does not say that we must practice for many years before we can taste liberation. It says that liberation is available now, in this very moment, with whatever is arising. We do not have to wait until we are better meditators. We do not have to wait until our circumstances improve. We do not have to wait until we have resolved all our problems or achieved all our goals. Right now, something is arising in experience. A sensation in the body, a sound in the room, a thought passing through the mind. Whatever it is already impermanent. It is already fading. It is already on its way to becoming memory. Can we see this? Can we be present with this arising and passing right now? Can we let go of whatever is here, not by pushing it away, but by simply not grasping at it? If we can, even for a moment, we have tasted freedom. We have practiced the path. We have done what the Buddha asked us to do. And then the next moment comes, with its new arising, and we practice again. And then the next, and the next. This is the path. Not a path to somewhere else, but a path that is walked right here, in each moment, with each breath. The Buddha summarized this entire teaching in one sentence. If we remembered nothing else from all these hours of stories and teachings, if we took away only these words and practiced them sincerely, it would be enough. He said, "Nothing whatsoever is to be clung to as I or mine. Nothing whatsoever. Not pleasant experiences. Not unpleasant experiences. Not our views and opinions. Not our spiritual insights. Not our bodies. Not our thoughts. Not our emotions. Not even our sense of being a self. Nothing is to be clung to as I or mine. This is not a commandment that we must struggle to obey. It is a description of freedom. It is a map showing us where peace can be found. It is an invitation to discover for ourselves what happens when we let go. When we cling, we suffer. This is not a punishment. It is simply how things work. Clinging is a contraction, a tightening, a resistance to the way things are. And resistance to reality is always painful. When we do not cling, we are at peace. This too is not a reward. It is simply how things work. Non-clinging is an opening, a softening, an alignment with the way things are. And alignment with reality is always peaceful. The practice is simply to notice where we are clinging and to let go. Again and again, moment after moment, for the rest of our lives. Let us close with one more story. It is the story of a woman who practiced in a monastery long ago, who eventually became the abbess of her community, and who one day discovered what all these teachings had been pointing toward. This woman had practiced for many years. She had studied the teachings. She had sat in meditation through countless hours. She had learned to watch the arising and passing of experience. She had come to understand, at least with her mind, that nothing was permanent, that there was no solid self to be found. But understanding with the mind is not the same as liberation, and she knew there was something more, something deeper, something that all her practice was pointing toward but that she had not yet fully realized. One day, she was walking slowly through the monastery, leaning on her cane as she had done so many times before. And as she walked, she was watching what arose, watching what passed away, watching the knowing itself that witnessed all of this. She saw that whatever arose also passed. This she had seen many times before. Then she saw something new. She saw that the knowing of arising and passing was itself arising and passing. Even awareness, even the witness, even the sense of being present with experience, this too was not solid. This too was not permanent. This too was part of the flow. And in that moment, something shifted. She saw that there was nothing to lean on, not the cane in her hand, not the ground beneath her feet, not even the awareness that knew the ground and the cane. There was nothing solid, nothing permanent, nothing that could serve as a foundation for a self. For a moment, this might have been terrifying. The ground was gone. The self was gone. There was nothing to hold on to, nothing to lean upon, and no one leaning. But instead of terror, there was release. She felt something in her mind that had been clenched tight for as long as she could remember finally let go. It was like a fist that had been closed so long she had forgotten it was closed, and now at last it was opening. And as the fist opened, she fell. Not physically, but in some deeper sense. She fell into the midst of everything, not holding herself apart, not protecting herself from life, not maintaining the separation of self and other. She fell into the seamless flow of experience, into the intimacy of each moment, into the vast openness that had always been there but had been obscured by grasping. She was free. Each of us has a clenched fist in our minds. It has been clenched for so long that we may not even know it is there. It grasps at pleasant experiences and pushes away unpleasant ones. It holds tight to our views and opinions. It clings to the sense of being a self who must be protected and defended. This fist is the source of our suffering. Not life itself, but the way we clench against life. Not experience, but the way we grasp at experience. Not change, but the way we resist change. And this fist can open, not through force, not through struggle, not through years of effort, but through seeing, through understanding, through the clear recognition that there is nothing here to hold on to and no one who needs to hold. We do not have to make the fist open. We only have to see clearly, and it opens by itself. We only have to stop feeding the clinging, and it releases on its own. We only have to look at what we are grasping and see that it is already passing, already gone, already empty. And when the fist opens, we do not disappear. We do not become nothing. We become what we always were, beneath the grasping, before the clinging, prior to the whole exhausting effort of being a self. We become intimate with life. We fall into the midst of everything. We discover that what we were seeking was never far away. It was here all along, waiting for us to stop holding so tight and simply receive. This is the invitation of the path. Not to become someone special, not to achieve some extraordinary state, but to let go of what we are already holding and to discover the freedom that is already here. Nothing whatsoever is to be clung to as I or mine. These words are not meant to be believed. They are meant to be practiced. They are meant to be tested in the laboratory of our own experience. They are meant to be lived, moment by moment, breath by breath, until they become not just words but the very texture of how we move through the world. The wandering sage said it simply: let go of everything. That is the real point. The great teacher said it fiercely to her grieving student: everything is impermanent. You must really learn this. The master said it to the seeker in the cave: bring me your mind, and I will pacify it. When the mind could not be found, peace was already there. And the abbess discovered it for herself on a quiet day in the monastery. There is nothing to lean on, nothing to hold on to, and no one holding. And in that discovery, the fist that had been clenched for a lifetime finally opened. May we too discover this freedom. May we too learn to let go. May the fist in our own minds soften and open, releasing us into the midst of everything, into the intimacy of each moment, into the peace that has been waiting for us all along. Let us rest here together for a moment. Feel whatever is present in your experience right now. Take a breath. Let it go. And when you are ready, we will bring our journey to a close together. We have come to the end of our journey together, though in another sense, the journey is only beginning. For the path of letting go is not something we complete and set aside. It is something we practice with each breath, each moment, each arising and passing experience, for as long as we are alive. We have heard the wisdom of wandering sages and grieving mothers. We have listened to bells fade into silence. We have searched for the self and found only openness. We have seen the fist that has been clenched for so long, and we have glimpsed what becomes possible when it finally opens. None of this was meant to be merely understood. It was meant to be lived. The teachings are not a destination but a door, and the door is open. You do not have to hold on so tightly. You do not have to carry the weight of grasping through your days. In any moment, with any experience, pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, you can practice letting go. You can open your hands. You can fall into the midst of everything. This is not something to achieve someday. It is available now. It has always been available. The peace you seek is not far away. It is here, in this breath, in this moment, waiting for you to simply stop holding and start receiving. May you find the freedom of the open hand. May you know the peace of the unclenched heart. May you fall, gently and completely, into the midst of everything. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.